Hey, everybody, and welcome to Easy English, the podcast, the show that helps you learn English easily. I'm Liam,
And I'm Zoe.
and today we're diving into something that I know a lot of you out there struggle with, watching TV and movies in English.
Yeah, we hear from a lot of learners, they feel like they have a pretty good vocabulary, they're taking classes, doing exercises, but then they try to watch their favorite show, and it's like everyone is speaking a totally different language.
Yeah, it can be super frustrating. Like, you're so excited to watch that new movie that everyone's talking about, but then you can barely understand what's going on.
Right.
I've definitely been there.
It's totally normal to feel that way, but it's important to remember that understanding spoken English, especially on TV and in movies, it's a skill.
Yeah.
And like any skill, it takes practice and the right approach to get better. So we're going to break down why TV English can be so tricky and share some tips on how to train your ears to understand it better.
Okay, so why is it so hard to understand English on TV? I mean, you don't have to talk back. You're just sitting there listening.
Yeah, right.
It seems like it should be easier than a real conversation.
You would think so, right. But there are actually a few reasons why it can feel so much harder. One of the biggest has to do with what language coach Hadar Shamesh calls brain capacity.
Okay.
When we're watching a movie or a TV show, our brains are taking in so much information at once. The visuals, the music, the plot, the actors' expressions.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot going on.
Exactly. And that means we might not have enough brain power left to focus on the language itself. It's like our brains are juggling and some of the balls they just drop.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm a bad listener. It's just that my brain is overloaded.
Yeah.
But it's not just the brain power thing, is it?
Right. Another big difference is that the way English is spoken on TV and in movies is often very different from the English you might learn in a textbook or a classroom. In real life, people speak quickly, they shorten words, and they connect words together in a way that can be hard to follow if you're not used to it.
You mean like saying gonna instead of going to? I do that all the time.
Or things like wanna instead of want to, and all these little shortcuts and connected words can make it sound like a totally different language, especially if you're listening at native speed.
So it's like trying to decode a secret message. But I think we said there was one more reason why TV English can be tough.
Yes, and this one might surprise you. Technology, believe it or not, can actually make things harder to understand.
Really?
The way audio is compressed for streaming and broadcasting these days can make speech sound less clear. And on top of that, a lot of actors mumble or don't project their voices as much as they used to.
Wait, so better technology actually makes the audio worse? That doesn't seem right.
It's kind of counterintuitive, but think about it. They're trying to squeeze all that sound information into smaller and smaller files to make streaming faster and more efficient.
Right?
And sometimes clarity gets lost in the process. So now you've got actors mumbling, audio that's been compressed, and all those fast connected words we talked about.
Yeah.
It's no wonder people reach for the subtitles button.
It's like a perfect storm of listening challenges. But don't worry, everyone. We're not going to leave you hanging. We're going to share some strategies to help you tackle all of this and actually start enjoying watching English language TV and movies.
Exactly. Just like learning any new skill, it takes the right approach and a little bit of patience. But with some practice, you can train your ears to understand even the fastest, most mumbled dialogue.
This is where it gets exciting. We're going to get into those strategies and tips after, we'll just get into them now, I guess.
Do it.
Okay, awesome. So
one really effective technique is what's called easy to hard training.
okay.
It's based on the idea that you learn best when you gradually increase the difficulty of what you're working on.
Okay.
So instead of jumping right into a super fast action movie with tons of slang,
Right.
you start with something easier and work your way up.
So what would something easier look like for English learners?
Podcasts are a fantastic starting point. And one of the great things about podcasts is that most podcast apps have a feature that lets you adjust the playback speed.
Oh, yeah. I use that all the time. When I'm listening to a podcast and someone is speaking really fast, I just slow it down a little bit.
Yeah,
And it's so much easier to follow along.
exactly. So for English learners, you can start by listening to podcasts at a slower speed.
Okay.
75% or even 50% speed can make a huge difference.
Wow.
And as you get more comfortable, you can gradually increase the speed until you're listening at normal speed.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off of having to understand everything perfectly right away.
Right.
You can ease into it.
And another great thing about podcasts is that there are so many different types of podcasts out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You can find podcasts on almost any topic imaginable.
That's true.
So you can choose podcasts that are interesting to you and that use vocabulary that you're familiar with.
So if someone is really into cooking, they could find a podcast about cooking.
Exactly.
And if they love true crime, there are tons of podcasts about that too.
Exactly.
It's like sneaking in English practice while you're learning about something you love.
Absolutely. And while you're listening, don't be afraid to pause and rewind if you miss something.
Right.
You can even listen to the same episode multiple times.
Okay.
Each time you listen, you'll pick up something new.
Repetition is key. But what about when you're ready to move on from podcasts to TV shows? Any advice for choosing shows that are good for English learners?
There are definitely some types of shows that are more beginner-friendly than others.
Okay.
For example, sitcoms can be a good starting point.
Okay.
They often use clear, everyday language, and the humor can help you learn new words and phrases.
I love sitcoms. They're usually lighthearted and fun to watch, and because they often revolve around everyday situations, the vocabulary is usually pretty relatable.
Right. And another thing that can make sitcoms easier to understand is that they often use what's called visual humor.
Okay.
So even if you don't catch every word, you can still understand what's funny just by watching the actors' expressions and body language.
It's like a built-in backup system for understanding.
Exactly. Now, reality shows can be a bit trickier because the audio quality isn't always great, and people tend to speak more casually and use a lot of slang.
Yeah, reality TV can be a wild card.
But if you're interested in a particular reality show, you can always try watching with subtitles at first.
Right.
That way you can get a feel for the language and the context. And as you get more comfortable, you can try watching without subtitles.
Subtitles are a lifesaver.
Yeah.
But even with subtitles, I sometimes find myself getting stuck on a specific word or phrase that I don't understand.
Right.
What's the best way to deal with that? Do I stop and look it up every time?
Not necessarily. Sometimes you can figure out the meaning of a word just from the context.
Okay.
Pay attention to the other words in the sentence, the tone of voice, and the overall situation.
Yeah.
Often you can piece together the meaning without needing to consult a dictionary.
It's like being a language detective.
Exactly. And if you are still stumped, it's perfectly fine to look up the word or phrase, but don't let it derail your enjoyment.
Right.
Make a note of it, and then try to move on with the story. The goal is to immerse yourself in the language and have fun.
So we've talked about podcasts, sitcoms, reality shows, and even subtitles. But what about movies? Are those off limits for English learners?
Movies are a fantastic way to immerse yourself in English language and culture. But they can be more challenging than TV shows because the pacing is often faster, the vocabulary can be more complex, and there might be more slang and idiomatic expressions.
So maybe save those epic superhero movies for later down the line.
It depends on your personal preferences and learning goals.
Okay.
If you're really passionate about a particular movie, go for it. Just be prepared to use the strategies we've discussed.
Titles, slow playback context clues. We've got a whole toolkit now.
Exactly. And the most important thing is to be patient with yourself.
Right.
Listening comprehension is a skill that takes time and effort to develop.
It's all about the journey. But I think we're getting close to the end of our deep dive for today.
We are, but before we wrap up, I think it's important to talk about one more thing.
Okay.
The fear of making mistakes.
Oh, I think everyone who has ever learned a language has felt that.
Right.
It can be so intimidating to try to speak or even just listen to English when you're not confident in your skills.
It's completely normal to feel that way.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Mistakes are a natural part of the learning process.
Okay.
In fact, they are essential.
Really?
Every time you make a mistake, your brain has an opportunity to learn and grow.
So we should actually be grateful for our mistakes.
In a way, yes. They are proof that you are pushing yourself and trying new things.
Okay.
And the more mistakes you make, the more you'll learn.
That's a great way to look at it. So embrace those mistakes.
Absolutely.
Don't be afraid to ask questions, to pause and rewind, to use subtitles when you need them.
Right.
The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
And remember, everyone learns at their own pace.
Mm-hmm.
There's no need to compare yourself to others.
Right.
Focus on your own progress, celebrate your achievements, and enjoy the journey.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have, but before we say goodbye for today, we want to leave you with a final thought. We were talking about the fear of making mistakes.
Right.
And how it can really hold people back from getting better at understanding English on TV and in movies.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I know for me personally, I used to get so frustrated when I couldn't understand everything.
Right.
And it made me not want to even try.
Yeah, I totally get that. But the thing is, the more you avoid it, the harder it becomes.
Right.
It's like anything else. The more you practice, the better you get, and that includes making mistakes.
So how can we reframe our thinking around making mistakes when it comes to learning English?
Well, I think it's helpful to remember that everyone makes mistakes.
Even native speakers.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about it. We all stumble over our words sometimes or mispronounce things or forget what we were going to say.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I just never thought about it that way.
And when it comes to learning a new language like English, it's even more normal to make mistakes.
Right.
You're essentially trying to rewire your brain to think in a completely different way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So instead of seeing mistakes as failures, we need to see them as opportunities for growth.
Okay, I like that.
Each mistake is a chance to learn something new and to get a little bit closer to fluency.
So what are some practical tips for actually dealing with those mistakes when they happen? Because it can still be discouraging,
Well,
right?
yeah, for sure. It's one thing to say embrace your mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's another thing to actually do it in the moment.
Right.
One thing that I found really helpful is to try to identify the specific type of mistake I made.
Okay.
Was it a pronunciation issue? Did I misunderstand a word? Or maybe I just got lost in the overall flow of the conversation.
Right.
Once you know what kind of mistake you made, you can start to focus on improving in that area.
So it's kind of like troubleshooting.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're watching something with a friend or a teacher, you can always ask them to clarify something you didn't understand.
Or even just rewind and watch it again.
Exactly. And there are so many resources available online now, too.
Right, like dictionaries and language learning apps.
Yeah, and even just forums where you can connect with other English learners and ask questions.
So you're never really alone in this journey.
Exactly. And I think that's really important to remember. Learning a new language can be challenging,
Yeah, definitely.
but it's also incredibly rewarding. And the more you embrace the process, the more you'll get out of it.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your amazing insights and advice.
It was my pleasure.
For everyone listening out there, keep practicing, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.